It is May 21st, 2025. We have our special guest, Ben Ilhoff, with us all the way from Oklahoma. Very
Hey,
happy to have
Baba.
you. Can
Jay
you
Baba.
see if I share my screen? Can you see this? If I go like this, can you see my slide?
It looks like it's loading, maybe.
How about now?
Right now, it just says that you've started screen sharing.
There it is.
There we go.
There he is.
There he is. So I'm very happy to say that Ben is a contributing author to our new book, Love with Beloved Mayor Baba, coming out this fall. So if you want to get more after this, he'll be happy to tell you more about his offering in the book, and you can go deeper with that. We are going to have a little bit of structure. We've got some questions that I've prepared to ask. And let's see. You ready for question number one?
Bring it.
When and where were you born and raised? And was it a spiritual family atmosphere?
I was never born. I'll never die.
Oh, boy.
I was born March 18th, 1972 in Tulsa, Oklahoma at St. Francis Hospital. It's interesting. I was raised in a spiritual family that was not spiritual. So, my entire conversation about God with my mom was, "Hey, do you believe in God?" "No." "Okay, great." That was it. And I had grandparents that went to church, and so we would go to church on Easter and things like that. And I, ring the bell or whatever, and hang out in Sunday school. So, but the reason I say it was spiritual is my family was very, very loving. I was very, very safe. There was so much God there, but it wasn't spoken about or talked about, which I guess later in life really turned out to be a blessing because we weren't objectifying it. They were really living it to the point where they didn't even think about it.
So maybe you didn't have to unlearn a lot?
I did not have a big unlearning process, although I will say, by the way, I don't know if we mentioned this. I'm actually at the Avatar Meher Baba Heartland Center in Prague, Oklahoma right now, about 60 miles from Tulsa. And this is near the accident site that happened in May of 1952.
Awesome.
So, yeah, no, as far as unlearning goes, there is a collective here, I think, that there's it seemed like growing up here, there's definitely still a lot of fear-based Christianity here. I think there's an awakening happening in that church, and I think I felt some of that. I still maybe have little blips, not very many anymore, but for a while I struggled with hell and damnation because a lot of people talk in those terms around here.
Sure. So that's a perfect segue to my next question. What would you consider your first real spiritual path to be or have been?
So, spiritual path. Well, I had an experience that when I was about 13 years old, it seems like the first 12 years of my life were just playing, being safe, being loved. But around 13 years old, I started to have experiences when I went to sleep at night or when I would lay down for bed, where I would be talking to infinite intelligence. And at first, I thought, what is this? I was also into role playing games and Dungeons and Dragons at the time, and I thought, I'm a smart guy. I could be role playing both of these voices here. And I can't give you great examples, but that voice had communication with me that up leveled me and acted like a father. I was actually raised most of my life after I was 6.5. I didn't have a dad around, and so it was just my mom raising me. And yeah, so I started to have this connection. And that led to some pretty phenomenal experiences. Namely, I was very interested in vortexes for a long time because I started to, I would lay down. I had this whole ritual where I would raise my hands, I would pray out of my hands to this life force, and then I would hold my hands down on the bed. And I remember thinking that was kind of a Jesus on the cross kind of pose. I would have my hands out and I would open, I would feel, in my mind, messages were coming in through my palms of my hands, and I would receive intuitive downloads, I guess. And after that, I would lay there and I had a street lamp outside my window, and I would close my eyes and there would be this red afterburn. Is that what they call that? Or whatever, you see
The
the red in
retina.
your, what's it?
It's like a retina.
Exactly. And that was a physical phenomenon, right? So I would see that. And then at some point I would gain control of it, or God and I would begin playing with it, you might say. It felt like a co creation. And it would quickly turn into these magnificent wormhole type vortexes that were really, really, and I wasn't on any drugs, really, really beautiful, with music, with maybe like, I want to say 16 to 20, I mean, just to throw a number out, instruments. They were all working together. The music, I loved the music. And
So
and
God got Hans Zimmer involved.
yeah, I've always been interested in music. I was a musician already by this time too. I'd played a lot of piano, but I would see the music working with the lights and everything, and I could tell I wasn't completely creating it. I was partially creating it and partially enjoying it. It seemed like at the same time, right? And so that was honestly like my first spiritual path. I began to like really crave that, and I really enjoyed that. Um,
Sounds
and then
mystical.
it
Sounds
was
very.
mystical. It really was. And it was very real for me. And I really don't do that, quite frankly, as much anymore. And I remember hearing Baba say something about the music of the subtle sphere and how
Yeah.
beautiful it was. And it makes me wonder if maybe that's what I was experiencing.
He says that in God Speaks. He explains that in God Speaks.
Okay, right.
Yep. So then let's now that you mentioned Mayor Baba, um, when and how did you first learn and hear about Mayor Baba?
So I've got some notes here, but Philip White is a counselor, and now he's a friend of mine, and he's a Baba lover. Um, but I think my calling to Baba actually happened before I knew who he was. Oh, one more important thing. After I started having these wormhole experiences, eventually I got convinced that it was God. And when I was about 14 or 15, I started to get, a lot of my friends wanted to smoke some marijuana, and I'm starting to look at girls in a different way and things like this. And like, and I tell God, literally, I think I used this language that I was going to screw this up. And God was already comforting me, by the way. I was asking God about the Bible and hell and all that. And I really was getting like waves of comfort from this loving entity that I was interacting with that was saying, don't worry about it. It's going to
Right.
be okay. Just stay attuned to me. And I, I remember telling God I was going to screw it up. And then God introduced me to someone who I thought was Jesus at the time, and because that's probably all I knew. But I really think that was the actual first introduction to Baba, but I didn't realize it yet. And I had this great discomfort in being here. I actually went to like 10 counselors before I went to Philip. That's an exaggeration. Maybe like seven, eight. It was a lot. And I would tell them, okay, I don't want to be here, mainly was the theme. But I would also say things like, I I'm born into a system, and if I don't play by these rules, these man-made rules, I could be homeless and I won't get to eat, and I don't like this system. And and a lot of the counselors were just analyzing me, thinking I was crazy and paranoid. And this is a little side note because I just thought it was so awesome. That was what did it for me with Philip. So one person even ran me through a computer, had me answer 100 questions, and the computer even said, "Yeah, he's paranoid, blah, 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 whatever." and I got to Philip and I said the same thing to him. I said, yeah, I'm born into the system. I can't stand it. Taxes, all this stuff. And he was just like, yeah, I agree. What's your point? And that really helped me because it was like, okay, you're listening to me. Thank you. I'm not totally insane. I mean, that's not really that crazy to think that.
Was it a validation? Did he
It was a
validate?
validation. And he had a picture of Baba on his desk. And I asked about Baba, and then and my dad died of AIDS in 1995,
Sorry.
and so that was some stuff that I was asking him about. And then I went through my first marriage was a pretty unhealthy marriage, and he helped me through that, and he was counseling my wife and me and my wife, and that's neither here nor there. But there was this picture of Bob, and of course I asked him because I'm in a relationship crisis. I was like, "Well, has that guy ever been in a relationship?" And he's like, "Yeah." In fact, he told me a little bit about Mara and how the love between them was like nothing anybody ever seen before, and that was kind of the. And then he'd mentioned Baba a little bit, but not much. Come to find out later, everything he said was from Baba because he's a huge Baba lover. But that was probably like 2002 when that started, and then I talked to him probably through 2000 like 6 7 before I met Charla, my current wife, and stayed and so anyway, yeah, and I guess I saw him a little bit after that, but around 2014 is when Baba started popping into my mind just over and over and over and over. I just couldn't get him out. And he came to me. He chose me. I didn't really choose Baba. Like Baba's like, hey, dude, like I need to talk to you, and I didn't really know what to do with that. And I looked for books. I wanted the books fast. I think I might have known about Sherry or books, but I didn't want to order. I didn't want to have to wait. So I went to Barnes and Noble. I went to a spiritual bookstore here in Tulsa, and nobody had anything. And then Philip told me to pick up The Awakener by Charles Haynes. And I ordered that from Sherrier Books, and that was my first introduction to Baba.
A great
Um,
introduction. Great
oh
introduction.
man, it was amazing. And yeah. So before that, there were a number of spiritual books I was interested in, not a lot, but the main one, probably spiritual path wise, would also be like the Tao Te Ching. Had a big effect on me when I was maybe, I don't know, much earlier, 16 years old or something.
I think that book by Charles Haynes was his master's degree thesis in his theology school.
That's right. It
Yeah,
was.
yeah. So that's a good segue to when do you feel like you had the first conviction of Baba being the avatar? When did that first spring up?
That is an interesting question. And I want to look at my notes real quick because I think I kind of wrote something about that. Uh, so, well, um, let's see. I struggled with it for a long time, and Baba just kept coming closer and closer and closer. But I'm surrounded by all these Jesus people, and I love, love, love spiritual community. Um, and I wanted to have spiritual community, but it was a little hard to have it in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when I only knew like one other Baba lover. And now I'm starting to meet a few more through the center here. But so, and a lot of Christians would tell me that I'm being deceived, especially by a guy who says he's the one, and they think their guy's the only one. And so that really caused some tension. Um, but last year, without going into too much detail, there were some family members who are very, 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 very Christian, and they're not very Christian actually. I take that back. They're actually very not Christian, whatever that means. But you know what I mean. They're very dogmatic and very fire and brimstone. And I think there was some stuff that happened where those people were not really communicating with them anymore, and they were pretty close in our family. Um, and that was like last October, and there was just this flood of Baba. I mean, this is even after I've written the book, but to be completely truthful, I wanted that conviction, And it would come in these waves where I would feel him working in my life and inspiring me. But then I would sort of fade out, I guess, or something. And then where'd you go? Kind of a why have you forsaken me kind of thing. Like, where'd you go, guy? Hey. And then, but it was really about me coming into alignment with Baba.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so can I tell you one of the jokes I love? It's kind of true for me, but
please.
religion is for those who are afraid of going to hell, and spirituality is for those who have been there.
Right? Yes. And that's also a big thing that's been happening with me actually lately, because we've been dealing with the mold issue in our house, and it's been really intense. And I've also, a big part of Baba for me is sobriety. So I've been sober for 5.5 years now. And
Congratulations.
thank you. I used to smoke marijuana. I'm seeing like okay, somebody joined and muted their mic. I'm still talking. You hear me, right? Okay. Little symbol popped up. Um, Baba helped me with that. I mean, it was Baba that I didn't realize marijuana was a hallucinogen. And that made so much sense to me, because I always thought of hallucinogens as like visual stuff. And after I told you about this vortex experience, you can see why I was drawn to certain psychedelic type things, because that was a very psychedelic type experience. But it was also Baba that let me in on the fact that those don't mean anything. And then it was Baba, through contemplating Baba's words and actually reading your book, A Mirage Will Never Quench. Well, the book that what do you call that?
It's,
Uh,
it's a book I was asked to put together for Baba.
yeah, Out of God in a Pill.
Yeah, so that's a whole story unto itself. But yes, somebody asked me to revise God in a Pill because of the work I was doing. I needed to use God in a Pill for a project, and I was going to get a whole bunch of copies and use it. And the woman who was working at the Share Your Book said, Laurent, it needs to be rewritten. Would you rewrite it? And I said, I knew her, Anne Conlon. And I said, no, but my heart said yes. And she said, would you just try? And I loved Anne Conlon. She was incredible. And so I said, all right. So I bought one copy instead of the many that I was going to buy. And I spent 7 years redoing it.
Yeah. And I got a hold of that book, and that book changed my life. And there's only one problem with that book, is on the cover, Laurent's name is like black and the book is like dark maroon or something. And I couldn't, like, you can't read his name on the cover. And it's funny because, I mean, you can read it if you really look, but it's kind of hiding down there. And I was on drugs when I got it. So I wasn't really, I didn't care who wrote it. All I cared about was Mayor Baba, please save me. And I hope there's something good in here that's going to get me to quit doing what I'm doing, because I could not stop. For me, I turned marijuana into a crack problem. It was very debilitating for me. I could not function without it. My kids want to go throw the football, and I'd sneak off in the garage and take a couple of puffs before I'd even do anything. Go on a walk, wake up in the morning. It was just constant. And I was really a slave to that. And I needed to be a slave to Baba.
Yeah. And I think
And
what they've studied is that nicotine in cigarettes and all that is more physically addictive than marijuana, but marijuana is more psychologically addictive. And I think
oh man, that was so hard for me. I mean, I quit alcohol too. Alcohol got bad when I tried to quit marijuana. I would drink a whole lot, and then of course, some marijuana would be nice. I'd go back and do that. And I was also a musician, and all my musician friends. I'm still a musician. I play a lot. My wife and I play music, and that's a big part of our lives. And I've played with some really great musicians, and a lot of them are still just all day stoners to this day. Some of them even felt betrayed when I quit. But skipping ahead and bouncing around just a little, then I ended up getting. I've always been really interested in intuition, and that's how I met Laurent. Is I bought Don Stevens' book on intuition, and I started contacting all the authors in the companions chapters, And Laurent was one of them, and that's how I ended up finding him and connecting with him. And I still didn't really realize that he'd written this book that saved my life. I literally carried a Mirage Will Not Quench Your Thirst in my, like, you know, in my pocket all the time, everywhere. It's a real small book, you know, you can carry it around. And I will say drugs gave me one little thing right off the bat. And that was really the only lesson I learned, which was my perception's not right. Because I remember the first time I smoked marijuana, it's a mind altering drug, and I was having a different perception. But the danger and the deception was I was like, oh, I'm peering into reality. I didn't know what was going on. But I was really just seeing another delusion, you know?
That's right.
And the takeaway is my perception is not reality. And that was the only takeaway I got, which I got right in the beginning. And I never really got anything else after years and years and decades of smoking it. It didn't give me anything else other than that.
And Robert Dreyfus, when I went to his house and asked for his support, he gave me tremendous support. He was one of the three that Baba had asked to do the drug work. I sat on his couch and he said, Baba told me, this is Robert speaking, he said, Baba told me drug experience is delusion within illusion. And that was actually the title of the book. But Sherry wanted to change the title, and they designed the cover and kind of did their editing thing. But that's what I thought that was such a powerful phrase, delusion within illusion.
Totally. I use that all the time, and it makes so much more sense. You're already delusional. Right. So now you got delusion within, and it just
Yeah.
keeps, and then you get lost in that labyrinth. And um, I believe it's creating sanskaras and more stuff for you to work out. And,
Yeah.
but surrendering to Baba, to my amazement, it's interesting too, because I actually wanted to get lost in that labyrinth. I'm a video producer by trade. I'm a visual person, and I obviously with the wormholes and all this stuff. And I was imagining. I used to imagine when I was high, actually trying to get lost in that maze. Like you remember Tron when the light cycles are going through the walls and it's like,
I
you
love
know,
that. I
I
love that.
would try to do that in my mind, like, and I love the thing you sent me today. It's like that, the cartoon, Laurent sent
Oh,
me a
the mouse.
cartoon.
The mouse.
Yeah. And when one of the mice is looking for the way out of the maze, and the other one's like, hey man, the way out's acceptance. And he's just sitting on a chair, like watching TV, like sipping a drink,
In the maze. He's in the maze.
He's in the maze, but he's not looking for the exit. Right. Because there is no exit. Not that way. It's
Yeah,
up.
that was a
Not
Buddhist cartoon. That was a Buddhist cartoon.
that was
Um,
good stuff.
so I want to honor that Diane and Terry and Ken are with us. So one last question, and I'm going to turn it over to them to be able to ask you questions. One last question is, what would you like to say to the participants before they start, turning up the heat?
Turning up the heat. Uh, Coming closer to the fire of Baba. Well, I want to say that Baba has been the greatest thing in my life. And you know what? Actually, I want to share something, because last time I'm going to share something I shared on the last time I was talking on here. I wasn't the speaker, but
Now you're the
the
grand. Uh,
what's that?
now you're the grand poobah. You get to say anything you want.
Yeah. So, because I had an afterthought, there's actually some more I want to expand on that, but I just want to say I've had this word on my heart a lot lately, and it's called revelationships. And I guess I coined it, but I also looked it up and somebody else already thought of it. But they didn't have really the same revelation about relationships that I did, and how revelation is not, I'm not talking about the biblical end times Armageddon here. I'm talking about revealation, like it reveals, okay? My wife and I have a revelationship. I know Laurent and Vanessa have a revelationship. I know Diane and Terry have a revelationship. And I know that this community, everybody in this room has a revelationship. And my relationship with Baba is very, very revealing. And I consider that a revelationship, which is what I'm getting at. if you think about the way Baba wrote books, like God Speaks, he wrote the first 9 chapters, right? And then Erish, right? And Baba was doing, so I wanted to ask, I have a question for you actually, Laurent, that pertains to this. Did the idea for the companions books start with Don? Was that inspired by Baba's way of writing books?
I never asked Don that,
Hmm.
but I can tell you it was also the way that Don ran a group of people who were meeting for Baba. Even though
Right.
Don was a direct disciple of Mayor Baba, and Baba said Don was one of the Mandali, he was like a conductor, and he would orchestrate a Baba meeting by saying, if he was running this meeting and there was a bunch of people, he'd say, well, Ken, what do you think about this idea that Baba's put forth here? And he would literally, how the conductor points to different instrumentalists to do their bit in a composition. Well, it was so spontaneous, but he would literally pull people in and honor their perspective and their thoughts and their wisdom in a way that was extremely profound. I witnessed it firsthand. I was one of the people he'd call on. And so first of all, he ran his groups that way. Then later he would write books. And so he would ask, I believe he would ask, or maybe he'd tell certain people that they're going to be writing a chapter. And that's how I got involved. He told me I was going to write a chapter. He never asked me.
And isn't that so much more interesting? Like
Yeah,
to lead that way. And
yeah,
doesn't Baba lead that way with us? Isn't
he did.
God like the formless God, like experiencing through us? Like, I mean, this is what it's about.
Yeah.
And I really think this is just so key. And there's a great book I'm reading right now, and it's Mayor Baba and his Three Bridges. Is that the full title name, or am I getting that wrong?
Mayor Baba's word and his three
Thank you.
bridges.
Baba's Word and his Three Bridges, and in that book is exactly what you're talking about, where Don is leading a group. Laurent was there, and
I was.
Don's leading a group like that in that manner.
That's right. In
And
London. That was in London.
I find that so inspiring. So here's a little quick little thing, and I just because I want to give you a level I didn't give you last time. I got to set this down. I'm going to get on the. So last time I was on here, if you're, I know Diane will probably remember I was talking about this, right? And here's my wife, here's me, for instance. We'll use my wife and I as an example, and here's God. Well, my old wife and I, we did not have God, or at least she didn't, and I never talked about it because that wasn't what we were doing. And so our relationship was based on physical things and music and drinking and partying and things. And so anyway, if you don't have the God dimension, so here's a here's a like a one-dimensional relationship, really. So we would think we were getting closer, right? Like we're coming together. Here's me, here's my ex-wife, and oh, look how close we are. Look how much we love each other. We must be made for each other. Oh, and then you get here and you got nowhere to go, and you start butting heads, and you're just like you can't stand each other. And then you really find that the only way to go is back from where you came, or just turn away from each other, because nobody can breathe here. This is just no fun. But through this, now we're getting into a three-pointed, two-dimensional relationship, I'll call it, where I add the element of God, Baba, God, whatever that means to you. And I love that our Baba is really not that he's putting all religions together like beads on a string. It doesn't matter what that is, right? Go do your religion, right? I mean, like, and here if we prioritize our relationship with God over each other, look what happens. We're coming toward love itself, and we're coming closer together by grace, and we meet in divine love, the ultimate, with God in a point like that, right? But here's where I forgot to take it last time. This is still two-dimensional, okay? This diagram here, and it's ascension, right? But what if this is actually not a triangle? What if this is a cone and we're looking at it from the side, and you turn it this way, and now you got this circle, this community, and everybody is moving towards the center instead of toward the mountaintop, right? And that would be a three-dimensional relationship, a true three-dimensional relationship. And that's the kind of community I want to create. That's why I'm on here right now. That's why I love Baba, and I love Baba lovers, and I love spiritual community, is because since I've been with Baba and I'm I think most of us can say if you come closer to that fire is going to start to purify your thoughts. And it's also going to ignite an awareness in you so that when impure thoughts arise, you're going to be more aware of it and you're going to want to hand it off to Baba as quickly as possible and maybe start japa, Baba, 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 right? And um, so anyway, yeah. So relationship through community. Oh, I was going to say, I get to have, because I don't see specialness in people as much anymore. I kind of give all focus to God. I'm able to have much healthier relationships with other women and lots of different people around me because one more little inspired thought here, real quick. I remember I felt like Baba gave this to me in an intuitive way, but I was sitting with a friend of mine who had lost his wife to suicide. And I love him. He's one of my best friends since seventh grade. He still smokes every day, so we don't hang out as much. He's one of those musicians that I love so much, but it's hard for me to be around pot smoking that much. And I'm getting better at being around. I don't really care anymore. But anyway, I love him. And I heard God speak through me and say, why do you hold this love and just use it with him? Why don't you use this experience with your friend to up level your ability to love and then just give that level away freely to everyone else? And that was life changing for me,
Beautiful.
really.
That's really beautiful. I love that.
So if anyone feels any love coming from this, use it. It's all yours.
All right, I want to honor the participants and open up the floor, come off mute, talk to Ben, ask him questions.
Ben, is your wife a Bubba lover?
Yes. She was raised in the Christian church. She loves Baba. She last time when I just got off the phone with her, I said J Baba and she said J Baba. But she also, I think we blend, again, being in Oklahoma, we blend Jesus and Baba, interchangeably. I have permission from Baba, I feel like, to speak in Jesus language, even if I
First.
know that that's an older version of the software.
Yeah, that's all good. As long as you get there, it doesn't really matter how you get there.
Right?
What about your kids with Baba or Jesus? Do they have that?
Well, we have the same kind of loving family that I kind of grew up in. My wife's very wonderful with the kids. They're safe with. We have a big picture of Baba in our living room. It's the main attraction where he's holding this, and I remember about 5 years ago, it was so cute because my 13-year-old, who would have been about maybe 7 or 8 at the time, and I was losing my cool, and he said, "You can't act like that. You want to act like Mary Baba," So they're getting it, and I don't push it on them either. I've got 4 children. I've got 2 from my first marriage and 2 from this marriage. They're all boys, and their ages are 13, 16, 24, and 26. And I like that Bob is more about attraction than promotion, because everybody in my life, maybe some people think it's sobriety. Maybe some people that like my mom, my relationship's better than ever with my mom and my brother. I've made some amends and things like that. And yeah, it's Baba, and I know that some people think Baba is like a cult leader, like in my, I think that's kind of maybe how my mom sees us. So I don't really talk about that. She hasn't said that. I mean, I kind of said it one time. I said it's not a cult. She goes, "Yeah, it kind of sounds that way," you know. But I feel it intuitively, and I'm like, yeah. I want to watch out too. I want to not ever become like the Pharisees. I think the Western Christians are very much like the Pharisees in their Bible, and they're demanding that you do these certain things, and it's this guy and it can't be anybody else. And I don't think they're looking for the deeper truth and all that. And so yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Ken, did you have anything?
Yeah, hi Ben.
Hey, Ken.
I remember seeing you a bit on one of the other forecasts. Sorry I came in a little late. At least I did remember.
Glad you're here.
And so I missed the very beginning, but I'm guessing from what you've been saying that maybe you're in Prague.
I am.
Ah,
Yeah.
wow. I've never been. Well, I've driven through many decades ago, but I've never been to the center. But I just want to say, Kuduz, Kuduz, is that how you say it? Sounds like you've really been blessed by Baba, and you know, I'm very impressed.
Thank you, Ken.
So about what year was it that you first heard of Baba? I forget now.
2014. It hasn't, yeah.
Ah,
I think that's you too,
At
right,
least this-
Diane? And
at least this life.
2012, 2013.
yeah, okay. You got a little row
We
there.
had a brand connection and a 12-step program too.
Oh, cool. What
Many
about you? What about you, Ken?
Way back. Still working at it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, here, let me show you around real quick. This is the Morrison house, which is next to the actual Burleson house. Looks like my camera might be a little tilted. It's really beautiful here. This house, they have really done an amazing job restoring it. I mean, there is just Baba everywhere here. I just love it. And this is a really, really, really amazing place. And hey, you
How
know, if
many
you're,
rooms do they have there?
it's big. There's like so many rooms. So let me just walk around here.
I mean,
There's just
rooms for lodging.
3, I think, upstairs. So there's like maybe, I'm not exactly sure, but maybe like 6 beds. There's this beautiful kitchen here. And I'll show you, it's really neat. There's well, actually, real quick, there's like a beautiful screened in porch. And if I walk out here, I can probably see the Burleson house, which is, yeah. Oh, let me get my camera straightened up on my gimbal again here. So over here, hopefully I won't lose you guys, is that's where the doctor lived over there. See if I can zoom in. Yeah. So that's where the doctor lived that took care of Baba right there. And that's open too. I've been in there. I actually wanted to go live from there. Are you with me still?
Yep.
Yep.
But the Wi-Fi wasn't as good. And
Don't go too
so
far. Don't go too far.
okay, I'm not. So I'm trying to get a look at this house. Let me actually zoom out again if I can show it. Well, anyway, it is this beautiful, I guess, Victorian kind of
No.
house. And it has like a porch, it has a balcony. I mean, it's just beautiful. And they actually have like a water filtration system, and they have air purifiers everywhere that they got during COVID. And they, my wife and I love that it has musical. Oh, there's my notes on the floor. It has, you know, it's really cool. They have like a piano, they have a harmonium, they have a drum, they have a whole set of crystal bowls and a frame drum over there. It's really just a great deal. And I mean, you know, the price is right too. So, I mean, it's like $30 a night for this entire place. So, I mean, you know, for 6 pilgrims, I think. And they have a library and many, many, many Baba books. And yeah, and it's just right down the street from Tulsa. And of course, there is the uh, accident site,
Yep.
which is so amazing. I forgot to shut the door over here.
Oh. So after you shut the door, I'm going to come back around with what I would consider to be pretty much my final question for you, Ben. And I'm warming you up to that. The idea is that people will come to Baba in the future, and they will not have met Baba physically, or if they did, it would have been in a previous lifetime. They're having some experience of Baba, and they're looking around online. Who is this Mayor Baba? And they stumble upon this video of you, and they say, wow, this looks interesting. And they start playing this video. So that's the context. What do you say to these people who are in the future and you might not even be alive anymore. What do you say to them about their experience of Baba, and what are your words?
I would say my life has never been better. And it just keeps getting better. And Baba has a saying that he can, light fire to your karma like a match to a haystack. And really, I have come in contact with the most benevolent being who I know is my higher self as I'm finding my way out of this person that I think I am. He is a perfect example. And if you read Baba's words, you'll start to see, I believe you will start to really feel the perfection, because I have read a lot of Baba's words, and I don't think I've ever read anything that did not resonate as truth. And some of the stories, just, I guess also I'd say hang in there, because the honeymoon period will end. There's a honeymoon period. There's like, hey, I found this great spiritual master, and then you might read some stories that might seem a little shocking to you. But to that, I say, read Hafez. I find Hafez to be very helpful in not trying to understand the master and being obedient to the master. And the poetry is so beautiful anyway, but really don't try to understand him. Don't, that just doesn't work. It's not about the lover. It's not about the beloved coming in alignment with the lovers thinking to love him in that way. It's the path of effacement, and it is very relieving, and it can feel like deep suffering at times, because we can be very attached to our ideas and our opinions, and we can even have ideas about what spirituality looks like, right? And a lot of that is probably erroneous and going to burn away in the fire of a guy like Mir Baba.
That's awesome, Ben. I want to honor that Rosalie has just joined us, and she was not here earlier. Rosalie, you're just in time. Did you have any questions or statements that you wanted to make? We have Ben Ilhoff, our special guest.
I don't know. I've never met Ben. Hello, Matt. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Rosalie. Welcome, Jay Baba.
Hey, Baba. Yeah, I'm truly a goner on the happening of the Blue Bus period, the work Baba did during that time, and I'm just very into the mystical language that was spoken through Norena. So, and I find it brings to life quotes that I've known for a long time with even a greater force. Yeah. So I think, and I know the way to go is to intuition. Baba told Adi Rani that, as Avatar, he brought us from sensation to reason. Now it's reason to intuition. It's a huge leap. It is huge. And, it's just going to happen. That's what's going to happen. And what could be better than, a straight line to God? God comes in human form so we could have, just to see how a human being could be.
Wow.
He doesn't come as, he doesn't want to be extraordinary. He says, I'm a regular human being. He's felt it all, probably had every disease, and but in one of the lines in this mystical language, and I says, okay, that does it. I liked it before. I mean, I liked the messages that came through Narina in the U.S., but you know, they were kind of, you know, we're very heady here in the U.S. You know, good old intelligence, and you know, it's just going another way. It's going another way. And I remember from Anaya Khan, the heart was the deeper intelligence. The heart was the deeper intelligence, you know.
Thank you, Rosalie. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ken,
I wanted to say this one line, and this is from the mystical language. This mystical language in I is in I the experience of God. Totally capitalized. It's the experience of God, you know. But we will not need priest. We will not need the intervention, you know. I grew up Catholic, so, and I'm very accustomed to intervention. And I have to say this funny. One time I went in for confession, and the priest says, will you go out and figure out your sins and then come back in? And I thought, wow, man. I thought, but Laurent, I wanted you to repeat your experience with Jean Shaw.
oh my God.
Yeah, I want you to repeat
You
that.
want me to tell that? Well,
Oh yeah, that is.
I will tell that. I will tell that, but I want to honor that I saw Ken's hand up first, and
Okay.
then I'll do that. Go ahead, Ken.
Thank you.
Yeah, what Ben was saying, and Rosalie, also what you were saying tied in, you know, about intuition and about what Hafez says about not judging the master. But Baba also says in the discourse, and for me, Baba tested my heart, and then my mind had to deal with it for a few years before it caught up. But you know, he says about the disciple has the duty and the privilege of testing the master in the early days, you know. And so that's a phase for many people. And I think another thing you can say to someone when, you know, as you say, you read a story and, you know, you say, wait, what is this? How could this person be enlightened and do this or whatever? And people's minds can be so fixed. I remember my grandmother, I had a Baba book and she showed an interest. And so I lent it to her, and she got to the part where it said Baba didn't, you know, when he was awakened, he didn't eat for 9 months, and that was enough for her. This can't be true. And she threw the book away, basically, you know. Or another friend who was a very spiritual woman, and she saw a picture of Baba in the later years, and he seemed to have a large stomach, and she thought, well, that can't be a spiritual person.
His nose is too big.
But yeah, but anyway, no, my only point was that for, you know, the other thing is context. If you don't understand the Baba story, maybe you just need more background still and learn more in the context and his ways of working. And, you know, you don't want to necessarily give a person a book like While the World Slept if they're new to Baba. You know, I remember even Jean Shaw was a bit upset about, speaking of Jean, about While the World Slept, you know, because that wasn't her experience of Baba. Her experience was basically just loving, you know, and supportive. So
Well,
we each have a different path, but go ahead, Laurent.
Yeah, well, since everybody seems to be bringing up Gene Shaw, I should probably satisfy Rosalie's request. It is a good story. Does everybody know who Gene Shaw was? Yeah, good. Ben, you know?
I actually don't, and I have not read the book you just mentioned either. As the world, I've heard of that, but I haven't read that one.
Save it for later.
Okay, they probably have it here. I might be able to take it home.
So I'll just tell this for what it's worth. You know who Darwin Shaw was?
Yes.
Well, Jean was Darwin's wife.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know. Sorry. Yeah, I was thinking Gene.
I don't even know how she spelled her name, but
Well, that's the male. I was thinking of a man. Yes. Yeah. I've actually read As Only God Can Love.
that's his book.
Right.
She didn't
So I
write any.
totally know who she is. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. So she didn't write any books, but and we would go. I was very young. I just came to Baba. I was probably 18. We would go to Schenectady, and Darwin and Jean lived in Schenectady, and he would have discourse meetings in his living room. So he had the little blue discourses books, and he'd pick a discourse and read it and talk about it with all of us. It was just extremely like fireside chat. I was the youngest, by far the youngest in the room. So I usually sat on the floor because I wanted to give the seats to the older people. And it was like a love fest, right? I mean, can't get much better than that. And so and Jean was present, but she was extremely quiet. She didn't really talk, in my experience. She was just supportive, present, very present. And so after that, we would get up and go into the kitchen. It was a very modest home, but she had set out like cookies and juice, that kind of thing. And we'd just have a little social time. So I'm literally minding my own business, like as much as you could ever mind your business, and having a cookie and like a Dixie cup with juice in it, something. And she walks right over to me and she says, Laurent, I need to tell you something. And I said, oh, great. And like, this was all her. At that time, I didn't really ask questions. I just absorbed. I felt like I was just constantly absorbing. And she said, I want to tell you what happened with Norina. And I said, oh, what happened? And she said, well, you see, she was giving these talks like at Carnegie Hall and other places where she would speak, but it wasn't like her speaking. She would say it was Baba speaking through her. And she said, and this was going on quite a while, and I thought this was hooey, this is not Baba, and I was upset. And this is Jean really just telling me how it happened, right? And she said, so I said, okay, I'm going to go down to New York City, because she was so Schenectady and New York City are quite far apart. So she said, I'm going to go down to New York City and tell Norina to stop this. This is not Baba. Stop this bullshit. Basically, is the way she would, she was very direct, and she was obviously a woman, but she was not very ladylike. She was more like a salt of the earth type. There was no frills. There were no frills. Okay. But very loving, kind woman. But obviously she had a very confrontational side. So she got on a train, I believe it was a train. It could have been driving, but I think she got on a train and went down to Gramercy Park in New York City, where Norina, who was quite wealthy, had an apartment. And if you know Manhattan, Gramercy Park is like, well, Manhattan's expensive, and Gramercy Park is the expensive part of Manhattan. And I grew up in Manhattan, so I was like, wow, okay, Gramercy Park. So she goes up and knocks on Norina's door, and Norina answers the door and says, oh my goodness, Jean, what are you doing here? And Jean says, well, I need to talk to you. So of course Norina says, come in. And Norina was apparently the type who would sit on the floor in the living room. She wouldn't sit in a chair. I don't know why, but she said she sat on the floor cross-legged and said, what is it? Talk to me. So she said, I sat on the floor across from Norina, and I said, this thought transmission or whatever you're doing in these meetings, telling people that this is Baba speaking through you. You have to stop all this nonsense. This is how she explained it to me, like very dramatic, like just stop. This is bullshit, and you're misleading people. And I came here to tell you enough already. And she said to me, and then Norina opened her mouth to respond. And when she opened her mouth, this rush of roses on the breeze of coming out of her mouth just wafted over her. She said, I didn't hear a word she said. I just knew it was Baba.
Whoa.
And
Whoa.
here I am, 18, standing, holding a cookie and a Dixie cup of juice, hearing this story. And I'm thinking, why is she telling me this? But I never asked her, why are you telling me this? Because that's not my nature. I just said, wow. I think that's all I said, something like, I was 18. I was brand new to Bob. I just said, wow. Now, 40 years later, it makes a lot more sense. And I think she probably told me, I can only imagine that she thought, well, he's young. So if I tell him, this story will keep alive.
Oh, that's true. But I knew why she told you,
How did
because
you know?
you told it at late night, and to my ears, because I think a lot of people don't believe that this could be, and I mean, for one simple reason, we are still in a patriarchal nation. It still has its little patriarchy. I mean, I usually don't say that, but to me, it's obvious. And Baba said the nature of women would be more easily going to intuition.
Well, so Baba said that in the West, the women are more spiritual than the men. And in the East, the men are more spiritual than the women.
Well, here we are.
Can I get a little clarity on your story? When you said it was like roses, you're saying that Narina didn't hear a thing that Jean said?
No, the other way around. So when Jean confronted, when Jean confronted Narina on the carpet, they're sitting on the carpet in the middle of the living room.
Yep.
After the confrontation from Jean, Narina opened her mouth to respond to what Jean had just leveled on her. And Jean said, I didn't hear her response, because when she opened her mouth, this kind of breeze of roses came, and Jean said it just came over her like, and she's like, and she said, I knew it was Baba.
Well, you know how you can do hearts? You can respond and do a whole flow of hearts.
I have no idea what you mean. What? Oh, you mean, are you talking something online?
Yeah, you can react and get
there.
Now open your mouth, Ken.
Well, now there's a handful of bubble up that go to Artie. They don't turn anything on. They don't touch any buttons. They make the heart shape with their hands, and out of the heart shape come all these hearts.
And we cannot do it.
We can't do it.
We've tried. We've
I've
done
seen
it.
those things happen on calls. Are you sure it's not a FaceTime call?
No,
No,
it's on
it's a Zoom.
RT Zoom.
It's
but
a Zoom.
It's probably a setting you have to turn on.
I don't
These are
know.
not setting kind of people.
I don't know. It's pretty remarkable.
And it
It's
just started
wonderful.
happening.
So I'm
To me,
curious.
It reminded me of this story because hi honey, only a few people can do it. Let's say there's 30 people in the Artie, maybe 4 people can do it and none of the others can. And they thought maybe it was like if it was an iPad or but we all have different stuff, and some people can do it and some can't.
So I'm curious about something that's been brought up now. How many feel like they intuitively hear the voice of Baba, or whatever that means, voice, like downloads, intuition, however that works for you, and how often? Like, is it like once in your life, all day long? I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, I could just say, of course, I have experience of intuition. I've never even thought about the frequency, so I'd have to think about that.
Yeah. I mean, I just, I feel like that's the path, right? Is like the awareness of mind and then the surrender, the obedience, the giving my thoughts to Baba constantly all day. And almost really, it feels like I've never thought of it this way until now, but almost an exchange of my thoughts for his intuition. So I surrender the thoughts and I give them to Baba. Even today, um, to be completely transparent, Laurent had asked me before we did this, would you like to know the questions I'm going to ask you, or do you just want me to ask them on the fly? And I think I opted for, well, let me see what you're going to ask me. And so, one of those questions from Vanessa, I believe, was, what's your favorite discourse? And I touched on this earlier in this broadcast. It's like, I don't, it's almost, and I say this lovingly, it's almost a trick question because it's like Baba's words are so perfect, and it's his words that make me believe in him honestly so much, because that's a big part of it. Because everything I read that's his words, it's always my favorite part of every book. It's like opening up the Bible and reading the red letters, it's like the Baba parts are always my favorite, and and I can analyze them and read them over and over again, and they always hit me right in the heart, and they melt me, and they're just amazing. Um, but I started to think, oh, well, maybe Vanessa's going to ask me that point blank, and I'm going to need to think about it. And then I was like, well, is she talking about just like the discourses book or discourses in general? So I was like, so in my mind, I thought, I'm going to go for the discourses book because there's a chapter in there that I like where he talks about these tips for spiritual workers. Well, in my mind, I got it mixed up. I had the wrong book. And today, when I drove to Prague, Oklahoma, which is a 60-minute drive from Tulsa, I'm in the car. I got my phone connected. And what I often do, by the way, for everyone out there, mehermedia.com, it has Don Stevens reading the entire discourses and the entire Listen Humanity books on there. And I've listened to those things so many times, I probably can't even count. We're into the hundreds now easily. And so today, one thing I like to do with those, because I've listened to them so many times, is I might have been shopping for a discourse at this point because I'm driving. I got to kind of watch the road. And I was going to click on discourses. And even though I didn't feel like a pressing on the top of my hand, my finger like kept going down to Listen Humanity. Like, and really interesting. I don't quite know how to explain it, but I ended up clicking on Listen Humanity. And then I was like, okay, fine. I love this book. And I like the discourses. So even though I like the whole book, if I did have to choose a favorite, I probably like the discourses better than the stories. I love the stories too, but the discourses are just, I feel like they're so practical, I can use this stuff. And I'm looking at the road. I kind of can see my phone. I just click a random one down in the lower half because I'm ready to listen to any of those discourses. And it goes to help to others. And help to others is actually the chapter I was thinking was in the discourses where he gives these tips for spiritual workers. And I absolutely love that chapter. But that just happened like that, just really intuitively. And I think I know that's Baba.
So just so you know, that part of Listen Humanity that has those discourses in it, part 2, those discourses were handed from Meher Baba's hand, the papers, to Don's hand at Meher. That's how we got those. That's extraordinary.
They're amazing. And Don's voice. I know Baba loved Don's voice. I can see why. He has a great voice. And he also had a little bit of money, and he went into a nice studio and used a really nice microphone when he recorded those books.
No, that's not what happened.
Oh, is London? Or no, tell us. Sorry.
That's okay. I was there when this happened. They went to London with the sound equipment and set it all up in his bedroom in his London flat. And he would go every morning to the London flat microphone and record in the bedroom. It was his bedroom, but they had expensive equipment. Yeah.
That's awesome. Man,
That
it
was
sounds great.
Bill Ludwig came all the way from the USA to do that.
Who I've recently become friends with. Welcome, whoever just joined, Zoom user.
Well, some people like to listen more than speak, so we'll just allow everybody to do that. I want to honor the fact that my wife Vanessa is with us. Honey, did you have any question for Ben?
Well, not a question yet. I don't have my questions in front of me, but I did want to respond to your, do you hear Baba's voice or God's voice?
Yeah.
Because when you said that, no, it just came to my mind. I was just thinking that in every case that I've heard Baba speak to me, I invited it. So it's not like I've had this life where I'm like, oh, no, and all of a sudden he's like, hey, it's like, it wasn't like a tap on the shoulder or anything. It was pretty much me going, okay, I'm in this situation, Baba, and I need you to help direct me. I need you to give me some insight. And that's when he would, sometimes it's more of like an energetic kind of feeling of like, okay, go in this direction. But then there's been a few times when it's just absolutely his voice and his touch, like physical touch. Like it's an energy, but it's also feels like
Wow.
it's human form.
Cool.
Yeah.
And he sent an angel.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, but it hasn't like getting a full, you have to be prepared for it. It's not like, when you think of like, yeah, I'd like to hear Baba's voice all the time. Well, actually, I don't think we really want to hear Baba's voice all the time.
Probably not.
Because it's like, then you have to like actually either do what he says or listen, it's like, it's a big deal. So then I was like, oh, okay, I need to like, follow through on this, like I have to like, so, yeah. So it felt like, when there is an invitation in, then you have to really surrender to what is being, brought to the situation. And a lot of times, it might be a spiritual gift, but it comes in a package of sometimes a form of hell, and you never could have imagined that level of hell in your life. But then, getting through it, it transforms you. So it's like, I don't know, it kind of feels like, Baba is putting that pressure on you to form you into that diamond.
So we don't frighten the children. Can you like tell me what you mean by hell? Like I mean, I have an idea. I mean, not like the feeling of it, but like what I'm kind of getting at. Maybe you can expand on this.
So for each person, I don't know. I mean, for some people, their form of hell might be that they have to live in an apartment complex, and deal with, never having like, enough money to like even have 2 sets of bedding. I don't know. That could be one person's hell. Another person's hell could be like, well, they got estranged from their whole family and they're in a situation where, they're being challenged to have to be kind and loving to people who are giving them, a lot of troubles. It's like it could be whatever is good for that person's ego. I don't know. It's, that's
a good answer.
It's our interpretation of what hell is, right? So, like somebody else might love to live in an apartment building and be, wherever in the city, and another person may not. So it's like, but there's usually a type of situation where you're being funneled into a specific circumstance that you can't get out of for a while. And, it's in whatever you try to do, it's kind of, you get limited. And that's when, like, okay, I'm working out a knot of something, some sanskaric knot. And it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it's not going to be easy.
Can I ask a clarifying question? It sounds like you're talking about when Baba gives you an instruction or an order, following through on that can lead to that experience of hell. Is that where you're going with it?
Yeah. I mean, if I never invited him in my life, I could be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna, I'm just gonna go pursue. Like I'm gonna, like in other words, I was just thinking about the other day. I was like, well, if you look at my, my resume, just in terms of life, it's like it's pretty simple. It's like, oh, homemaker, had a lot of kids, whatever. But if you look at my spiritual resume, I mean, everything that I was like had to go through, and what I invited him to do, it would be like huge. It would be like, it would be something most people would be like, hell no, I would never do, surrender that way or do that, or why would you do that, or, because it goes against society's norms. Like, you're supposed to gain, in life. You're in terms of material possessions and wealth and, you know, all of these other things like that are valued by the world.
Prestige.
Yeah, prestige, all that. Whereas, you know, if you're like following, you know, the spiritual path, that's not always, I mean, it might come to you as a gift, but, you know, it's usually, you know, you're having to just endure. It's like, there's a phase actually that Baba talks about. So there's the honeymoon phase, right? Which is wonderful. And we all need that because we need that kiss. We need that the scent of him and to really fall in love with him. I mean, in the human relationship, it happens as well. There's a honeymoon phase, right? And then there's the endurance phase, and that's the longest phase, right? So we have to go through that because he's holding our hand and he wants us, you know, to be drawn to him, but he knows like, oh, you're going to have to go through this. So just keep holding my hand. But yeah. Like you know, when Jesus says, you know, I was carrying you, you know, on the sand. I love that, you know, image of like, but
The walk through the desert.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a long endurance phase. And then once you get through that phase, probably when you're on the plains, you go into the bliss stage, right? So you're actually experiencing, you know, on a physical level, an uninterrupted bliss. But, you know, you still have the physical suffering of the body and, you know, you're going through the other mental suffering, but it doesn't have that edge that, you know, like that it would when you're going through the endurance phase and you don't have access to that.
Yeah, something that's helped me that I feel like God told me early on, and is I just felt like I was in through prayer. I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, I contemplated suicide just thinking about it, you know, I don't know. And I felt a really strong intuition of God saying, look, man, just make it to the end. That's all I'm asking. Just make it to the end. It's not going to be easy. Just make it to the end. And I tell my kids that too. I'm like, just make it to the end. That's of this experience here. That's literally your only thing you've got to promise me you'll do. I felt like from God saying, just make it to the end, man. And then also through Baba's illumination on the world being an illusion. And I don't know, you know, I know it's really hard because it feels so solid, but my goal, the goal was perfection. Progress is the way, I guess, but is to be really strong with God and not to be, you know, I always envision myself like my family gathered around, I'm on my deathbed and I'm just smiling ear to ear and I'm giving each person a little bit of wisdom and saying, it's going to be okay. I'll be waiting for you. Talk to you soon, you know, and that'd be great. But just to not take it too seriously, you know, the illusion, because it can be very, very painful here, often, even sometimes. And I don't know, there's a weird thing that's been happening lately. I know we're getting over time, but like I've been being brought to my knees over and over and over again. And it's strange because like I kind of don't want it to end, like because I know it's for my own good. And I think everything you're talking about leads to trusting Baba that he does. That's the key for me, is just trusting that he's leading me to where I need to go. And I'm holding on to him, you know, and even if I'm being drug and bumps and, you know, getting knocked around sometimes, um, yeah, I think that's it.
Can I respond to that, Ben?
Yeah.
I'm going to paraphrase it, but I think there's a Rumi poem, and part of the poem is that there's a doorway between here, this world, and God's kingdom, and everybody has to pass through that doorway, and the shape of that door is you on your knees in prayer.
I love that. That is so awesome. Hey, before I forget, um, on this Saturday, is the accident anniversary from the Baba accident here in Prague, in 1952, and that would be May 24th, 1952. And there is going to be an event here with a lot of people here. There's actually an international event and japa The Japa is actually for some reason, it's from 5 a.m. to noon that day, but I mean, you could probably just do it anytime, but from 5 a.m. to noon, the Heartland Center is promoting the Japa. And actually, if you want, and there's a Zoom for the event, and that's going to be worldwide. There's going to be people coming in from all over to talk about it. And so anyway, the information is on the Heartland Center website, which is ambheartlandcenter.org. And I think there's a little banner at the top. And if you click on it, you can register for the event. And then I think they email you the Zoom info. So it's going to be fun. I'm trying to get down here for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Last thoughts and feelings, anybody?
Well,
Hey, Bob,
has there,
thank you so much, Ben.
thank you for being here, Diane. Jay Baba.
Yeah, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ken.
Meher Baba ki jai. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
Mwah.